snap. The kick is in the air, and the kick this time is no, sir-ree. No, sir-ree. Final score, Tennessee 20, Florida 17. Pandemonium reigns.
You're listening to the RTI Podcast, powered by RockyTopInsider.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode here of the RTI Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, joined again by Ben McKee, our staff writer at RTI, and is also the co-host and producer of the Swain Event morning radio show. We appreciate you all tuning in for another episode here. It's coming out a little earlier than normal because, well, for one, it's a bye week, and we also kind of wanted to have a discussion here over the weekend, and as you're listening to this, it might be, Monday or something like that, but we wanted to have a discussion kind of earlier than normal because, well, there's a lot to discuss from the Florida game, but mostly, Ben, you and I wanted to sit here and talk about on this podcast two different things. One will probably take most of the podcast, and that'll be the obvious one, and that is Tennessee's quarterback situation. Moving forward, what do they do, and maybe our thoughts in general on Guarantano, on Maurer, or Shroud, or just where does Tennessee go here in the bye week and moving forward. Then I also wanted us to talk about, because I've seen enough people comment on it online that I think it's worth having a discussion, and that is the coaching from the game, the coaching from the season, because I've seen people talk about coaching being an issue, and I wanted to address that because I think you and I got to have a good conversation about that and have a conversation that I think a lot of fans would, if maybe not, even if they don't appreciate it, would at least listen to it and see where we're coming from. But Ben, let's first start off with, like I said, the obvious one, the most talked about topic from the Florida game, and that is Tennessee's quarterback situation. Guarantano, once again, ineffective. One of the interceptions was not his fault because Juwan Jennings should have caught it. You can say whatever you want to about Guarantano throwing it a little hard. It was catchable. I don't care who you are. A wide receiver, 10 out of 10 times will say that one is on him. Jennings should have caught it. Hit him not just in one hand, but hit him in both his hands. Went through his hands, and then the Florida cornerback Trey Dean, who was a former Tennessee commit at one point, made a good heads-up play, picked it off. Second one, that's on Guarantano. Callaway made the correct read on the cover two, on what the corner was doing. Guarantano did not, and he ended up throwing it, really almost right to the Florida defender, Marco Wilson, and he picked it off, and he missed a wide open Dominic White-Anderson. He just had a couple other passes that were just inaccurate and not good on the day. And then Brian Maurer comes in to start the second half, and I thought you could tell that they spent halftime talking with him and getting him prepared for that first drive, and he did a good job in that first drive. He obviously still made some mistakes, but Ben, to me, he's a true freshman on the road making in his first actual SEC action. It's a lot more forgivable, the mistakes he made, than what your fourth year, junior was doing in the first half. But he made some good throws. He made a really good, accurate throw on a third and long to Josh Palmer. He made a good throw. I think he made a good pitch and catch to Brandon Johnson, or he threw it to Johnson, and Johnson ran a little bit more, but he made some good throws in that first drive. Got Tennessee on the board for the first time all game. And then his second drive, you could tell he's pressing a little bit, throws a really bad interception, and then Pruitt, ends up benching him, and then he doesn't come back in until the fourth quarter. But then that leads, and Pruitt's comments after the game were interesting. You wrote a piece about that on RockyTopInsider.com. If all of you all listening want to go read it, you did a good job writing a piece after the game on Saturday night of taking Pruitt's comments about the quarterback situation, not just about Guarantano, but about Maurer and about the position in general. Pruitt said that Tennessee hasn't gotten good quarterback play in 3 of the first 4 weeks of the season. I think that's very accurate. I would 100% agree with him on that one. But Ben, I've written a column about this situation, so my thoughts are kind of already out there. And if y'all haven't read the column yet, I would suggest you do it because I spent a lot of time working on it. So obviously we'll plug it, but I'll share my thoughts here too on the podcast. But Ben, I want to get your thoughts because I haven't, aside from stuff I've seen you post on Twitter and everything too, I want to get your thoughts on the quarterback situation because I did think you made a good point on Twitter on, I believe it was late Saturday night. You posted the question kind of talking about, where does Tennessee go from here? Where does Tennessee go from here? Do you think this it's time to move on from Guarantano? It's time to give the keys over to the true freshman, or is it maybe do you stick with Guarantano through the bye week and see if he can right the ship? And I'm curious what your thoughts are, because if you turn it over to true freshman, you can make an argument that maybe you're giving up on the season a little bit and just trying to get the guy prepared, but maybe not. Maybe you think that's the guy who gives you the best shot to win. But before I go more into detail of what I think, I want to hear what you have to think about the quarterback situation.
Yeah, in terms of moving on from JG, I'm in the extreme minority, and I realize that. So please feel free to tweet all of your angry thoughts at me on this. I realize that many disagree, and I realize that I'm in the minority, but I still 100% believe in what I'm about to say, and I don't think it is smart to start Brian Maurer against Georgia, because I believe you're setting him up to fail. It's not that I'm against moving on from JG. It's that I don't believe that the options are much better. The backup options aren't very good, in my opinion, at the moment. That's not to say that Brian Maurer won't one day be a good quarterback at Tennessee. I'm not saying that at all, and we haven't seen enough of JT Shrout to determine whether he'll be a good quarterback at Tennessee or not. But right now, I know it seems crazy, and it's hard to believe, but Jarrett Guarantano absolutely gives Tennessee the best chance to win. It's just the unfortunate aspect of Tennessee's quarterback situation right now. It's just not good. It's as simple as that. And by me saying that Jarrett Guarantano is the best option right now isn't me acknowledging that he is, playing good, because he's not. He cost Tennessee the BYU game, the Georgia State game. He did not play well in at all. And then the second quarter against Florida, he did not play well either. The first quarter, he actually played good. His last throw of the first quarter was the incompletion to Juwan Jennings. That wasn't even an incompletion. It was an interception in the end zone that Juwan Jennings just flat out has to catch. I mean, it's as simple as that. So am I happy with the quarterback play? No, not at all. But Tennessee's backup options aren't as sexy as you may think, simply because, Jarrett's playing bad, we got to get somebody else in. I like Brian Maurer. He has a ton of energy. He has a ton of passion. I love his swag. I love his fight. And it's obvious that Jeremy Pruitt does too, but there's a reason Jeremy Pruitt continues to ride with JG out there instead of turning it over to Maurer. I think that Pruitt realizes that JG, when playing his best, gives Tennessee a chance to win most of the games. And I was kind of baffled on Saturday night when I posted my question that you were referring to, or I guess it wasn't really a question, but it's just like my thought on the quarterback situation at the moment. To me, it's quite the dilemma that Tennessee's coaches weren't expecting, and they are perplexed. They are stunned. Jim Chaney, T. Martin, Chris Winkie, Jeremy Pruitt. They didn't think Jarrett Guarantano was a Heisman candidate by any means, but they didn't think he was going to perform this poorly. And it's because JG is not playing up to his potential. JG is 10 times the better quarterback than he is playing. Maybe not 10 times. Maybe that's an exaggeration. But my point is that he is much better than he is playing. He is not this poor of a quarterback. I know people disagree with that, but it's the truth. Go back and look at the Auburn game. Go back and look at the South Carolina game last year. Go back and look at the Kentucky game. That is JG at his best. And so my thought on social media last night was that JG has created this just complex dilemma for Pruitt and the coaches that they have to weigh during this bye week. Do we continue to ride with Jarrett Guarantano and pray that he turns it around? Because JG at his best can beat everybody remaining on the schedule except for Georgia and Alabama. And when I say that, let's also take into consideration that if Tennessee were to beat South Carolina and Mississippi State and Missouri and Kentucky and Vanderbilt and UAB, it's not solely just JG beating the team himself. The starting or the win-loss record for a quarterback is the most over-exaggerated, overhyped stat in all of sports, because it's not just the quarterback who's going out there and playing football. There are 21 other men out there playing football with him. Does the quarterback have a heavy influence on the football game? Absolutely, but he is not the sole determining factor on who wins and loses. So do you, as the coaches, do you continue to put JG in there and pray that he turns it around? Because JG, when playing like he did against Auburn, Kentucky, and South Carolina, he can absolutely lead Tennessee to a win over this year's South Carolina team, Mississippi State, Kentucky. Do you just continue to ride with that and hope he turns it around? Or do you put in Maurer and just kind of take the lumps? Because to me, you're not necessarily tanking the season if you put Brian Maurer in there, but I do think you 100% sacrifice potentially getting to 5 or 6 wins. Again, just because I think JG can win every game remaining on the schedule except for Alabama and Georgia doesn't mean that he'll actually go out there and lead Tennessee to a win in those particular games. But he does at least give you the possibility of doing that if he is playing up to his capability, whereas I don't believe that's the case with Brian Maurer. Has Brian Maurer gone out there and made a couple of really nice plays? Absolutely. And I think it's so funny that people are on social media saying that, well, JG's thrown into coverage, he's missing open guys, and that's a common critique about JG. Brian Maurer's making the same mistakes. He's thrown into double coverage. He's thrown into triple coverage. Mm-hmm. You go back and look on the possession that ended in a field goal, Tennessee's only points in the game. He throws the ball to Marquez Callaway, and the ball goes out of bounds. He had Juwan Jennings in the slot. He makes a good throw. Juwan Jennings has a touchdown right there. So even Brian Maurer has missed open guys. And then if you want to look at just pure completions to attempts, JG's actually been more accurate with the football. If JG's career ended today, JG's the most accurate quarterback in Tennessee history statistically. He would own the career record for completion percentage. So I get all the hate towards JG because he's not performed well, but this has more to do about the backup option not being as sexy as it may appear. And again, that's no indictment of the future of Brian Maurer. He's just not ready yet, and I would not be willing to throw him in against Alabama. Personally, I would wait until after the Alabama game. I would not throw him in there against Georgia, the number 3 team in the country, the team that I actually think is the best in the SEC right now. I'm not throwing Brian Maurer into that football game to start that game. Would I consider starting him against Mississippi State, the game after Georgia? I would, but what worries me about that is you can't start Brian Maurer against Mississippi State and then the next week not start him against Alabama, because I also don't want Maurer going out there against Alabama. So I know it's not a very popular opinion, and I apologize for being long-winded, but I would hold off on making the quarterback change until after the Alabama game. Reevaluate things there, and then throw Maurer to the wolves when it's much more manageable, rather than he's going to get his head beat in against Georgia and Alabama.
I understand what you're saying, and I made good points. I think you argued your case very well, and ultimately I don't think there's really honestly a great decision either way, because I'm with you, and I mentioned it in my column on Sunday morning about there isn't an ideal place to put in Brian Maurer at this point. I mean, I think putting him in, having the bye week here to prepare him, or JT Shrout, whichever one you go with, I think it would be Maurer, because he's the one obviously that came in against Florida. But with the bye week being where it is here now, you have an extra week to prepare him. I thought they did a good job getting him prepared at halftime to come in against Florida, and he had one good series. If you have a whole extra week to prepare him, and then the week before the Georgia game for practice, I think that will be good for him. But like you said, Georgia's a really good team. Their defense, their pass defense has been really good. But then that next week against Mississippi State's pass defense has actually been really good this year. They're right behind Georgia in terms of yards allowed per game. Georgia is 6th in the SEC. Mississippi State's 7th. Mississippi State's actually allowed a worse or better, however you want to word it, but their opposing quarterbacks have completed a worse percentage of passes than what opponents have against Georgia. Georgia is allowing a 60.5% completion percentage to opponents. Mississippi State 53.2%. So that's a lot better, or a lot worse, however you want to look at it. Both teams have picked off 4 passes. against, that picked off 4 opponent passes. So to me, you have Georgia, then you have Mississippi State, and then you have Alabama, and then you have South Carolina, which they've not been good. They're off to a bad start. So, I mean, they've actually had a really bad pass defense. So I get what you're saying there, Ben, as far as maybe waiting to start him till South Carolina or you see what JG does in those games. But I still think the Mississippi State game is winnable, and I think that if I just don't honestly think at this point right now, unless he can get something fixed, unless he goes through the week of practice in, I'm not saying they hand the keys over to Maurer and just hand it to him, because I think he has to earn it. I mentioned that in the column too. You can't just give guys the job if they don't have a good, practice well, because that's going to set a very dangerous precedent for the rest of the team and the rest of the roster. But so far, I mean, Maurer hasn't been awful at practice. Him and Stroud have definitely not been great, and that's why Guarantano has kept the job, because he's been the better one in practice. And I mean, he hasn't been great in games, but you and I have seen practice, and Jason Swain, who he gets to see more than we do because he's a former player, he's seen practice too, and he's reiterated time and time again what we've seen in the brief portions of practice we get to see, that Guarantano's been the best practice guy. And it's not like Maurer's been a gamer per se. He was 0 of 2 in his first action against UTC, and then he was 4 of 11 against Florida. He's not been a gamer necessarily, but there's not going to be an ideal place to start Maurer for a while. I think I think if he earns it in practice, you just got to give it to him and go. I mean, I made a point of looking at. There's other examples you can point to that I guess would disprove my point. But you look back at Josh Dobbs in 2013 when he took over. It was mid-game against Alabama. His first start came against number 10 Missouri. I think they were number 10 when Tennessee played them at the time, or they finished number 10. Whoever it was, they were a really good team that year. They won the East that season in 2013, and they ended up picking off more passes than any other team in the SEC that season, and that was Josh Dobbs' first start, and it was on the road against Missouri, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that was on the road when he played against them. If it wasn't, it was still a really good Missouri team that he played against in his first start. Go back to even Casey Clausen. His first career start came against Alabama back in October of 2000. I think it's actually coming off bye week too. He played against Alabama, and Tennessee won. Granted, Alabama in 2000 was definitely not the Alabama they are now, but it's still it was the third Saturday in October, and Casey Clausen, as a true freshman, made his first start. Go back to even Peyton Manning in 1994. His first start came on the road against Mississippi State, and that was back when Mississippi State. I know later in the 90s they were pretty good. Obviously, Tennessee faced them in the SEC championship game, but I can't remember how good they were back then. But still, it's on the road in an SEC game. At some point, if they give you the best chance to win, you got to play. I mean, I know some of those, actually all of those might have been because of injuries to the other quarterbacks, and obviously that's not the case right now with Guarantano. Ben, you mentioned if Guarantano plays up to his ability, Tennessee can win these games against Mississippi State and South Carolina and Kentucky and Vanderbilt. I would counter with this. I haven't seen Guarantano play up to his ability at any point this season. The best you've seen him play was against UTC, and that was against an FCS school. He hasn't, in 3 weeks this season against FBS teams, he hasn't played anywhere close to the same type of way he was playing last year. And I don't know, you and I both have talked about this a little bit. He's changed his mentality some, where he's playing more aggressively this year. I don't know if it's that and the fact that this is his fourth coordinator, and he has 4 different systems, kind of rattling around in his head, or 4 different position coaches and how they've taught him bounce around in there, and 2 different head coaches and 4 different, not just 4 offensive coordinators, but 4 different styles of play. I guess you could say, Butch and what's his face, the guy who, I just forgot his name, but it's a terrible offensive coordinator in 2017. They're essentially the same offense, because it was just Butch's offense that was being run, by a different OC, but it was still Butch's offense. So maybe just 3 offenses in 4 years, but that's still 3 very different styles being run in a 3-year span that he was having to learn and do. I just am not. I've been a big defender of JG. You and I both have, and you and I both would agree that dating back to 2018, he was getting too much blame for Tennessee's woes. In 2018, I would still maintain that he did. But this year, I think there's been obviously some overreaction by fans. That just is going to happen. But I still think this year it's more warranted than it was in 2018. And I don't think we're going to see Guarantano play up to his ability. And he hasn't. If he couldn't do it against BYU, that defense is nowhere near as good as the defenses he's going to face here in the next 3 weeks. And like I said, South Carolina notwithstanding, even Kentucky's defense is still better than what BYU's is from an athlete standpoint, from a development standpoint. Missouri's got a really good defense. Just looking at their stats right now on their passing defense, it's really, really good. Teams are completing less than 50% passes against them. They're giving up the fewest yards per game in the SEC. They picked off 5 passes and only allowed 2 passing touchdowns. Granted, I think part of that might be with who they've played, because they've played Wyoming. Well, they played West Virginia, and even West Virginia didn't have a great game against them. And obviously they don't have Will Grier. But anyway, my point in all this, to saying all this, is that there's just not really an ideal time to play any of the, whoever it is, it's going to be Shroud or Maurer. Like I said, they've got to earn it in practice. You can't just hand them a job. But assuming they do well in practice, Ben, I get where you're coming from. And like I say, you make really good points. And that's why I don't think this is going to be – I said it's an easy decision in my column because it's an easy decision for me. It's not going to be an easy decision necessarily for Pruitt, because he's got a lot of pressure on him. He's making $3+ million. Jim Chain's making $1.5 million. It's more pressure for them. I'm not making near that type of money. I don't have near as much pressure on me as they do. But I just haven't seen Guarantano at any point this season play really even close to his potential. For like you're saying, I agree with you. If he plays up to his potential, up to his ability, Tennessee absolutely has a really good shot at beating all the rest of the teams on their schedule that aren't named Georgia or Alabama. He just hasn't at any point this season played up to his ability. Like I said, the closest he got was against UTC, and that's against an FCS school. So I think, like I said, they got to earn it in practice. But assuming they do, I'm 100% fine with them taking this bye week and next week's practice to get one of the young guys ready. And you got to play them, because I think the more experience you get them, the more prepared they're going to be to get some of these wins against Mississippi State or South Carolina or Kentucky. So it's not a clear-cut answer, but I think it's time to go to one of the younger guys, whether it's Maurer or Shroud. Like I said, I think it'd be Maurer, but whether it's Maurer or Shroud, I just don't think Guarantano gives Tennessee the best chance to win at this point.
I get it, but I do disagree with the sentiment, and it's not just you, the sentiment that we haven't seen JG play well at all this year. We haven't seen him play well for an entire game, because go back and watch the BYU game. He played good not the entire first half, nearly the entire first half. I'd say 90% of the first half against BYU was good for JG. It truly was. Go back and watch the tape, and if you give him a check for a positive play, aka doing his job, or you were to give him an X for him not doing his job, I promise you 85-90% of the plays in the first half against BYU were check marks. It was when he missed Juwan Jennings down the seam on that final possession of the first half against BYU, and then he missed Palmer on the post. Both of those plays would have resulted in touchdowns. He got a butt chewing from Pruitt on the sideline. We saw it on television. We saw it in person in the stadium. From that moment on, he played terribly. So he did play well for the first half against BYU, and he played good in the first quarter against Florida. He did. Go back and do the same thing that I told you. When I say you, I'm not referring to you, but just in general, anybody listening, if you don't believe me, go back and watch it for yourself. Give him a check mark, an honest check mark, or an honest X for whether he completed his job or did not complete his job. And for the entirety of the first quarter, he did his job. He did good. He hit Juwan Jennings a couple of times on the first drive, hit Juwan Jennings for a 27-yard pass. He found Austin Pope over the middle of the field. He completed a pass to Tim Jordan, completed several passes to Jennings, as I mentioned. And then the interception at the end of the first quarter, that's not his fault. That's simply not his fault. Juwan Jennings has to catch the football. And I think the whole narrative that JG threw the ball too hard is silly, because this is SEC football. This is Tennessee versus Florida. This is the best of the best, rivalries in America. And I know people say it's not a rivalry anymore. Tennessee hasn't done enough winning. I get it, but the two teams still hate each other. It's a big football game. It means a lot to Florida fans. It means a lot to Tennessee fans. It means a lot to Juwan Jennings. He has to catch that ball if he wants to play in the NFL. It was a great pass by JG, but people are going to find every excuse to just kill him for. And as Dan Orlovsky said on the broadcast, in the red zone, you have tight windows to throw into, and you have to put zip on the football. That's exactly what JG did, and Juwan has to catch it. Simple as that. And then I also saw a lot of commentary about, well, he missed Austin Pope on the play before. No. The defender just made a really good play. Mm-hmm. If JG lobs that, it's picked off by Florida safety Sean Davis. And what else is he supposed to do? As soon as he came out of the play action motion, he tried to get rid of it. Eric Gray missed the block, and Florida's Greenard made just a terrific play on it. So it's a long-winded version of saying that JG has not played well an entire football game. But against BYU, he played good enough to win the entire first half. And then when he missed Jennings wide open late, then when he missed Palmer, that's when things began to spiral out of control. Then against Florida, that interception, although it wasn't his fault, it's as if he let it destroy him mentally. And then he comes out to the next possession to start the second quarter. They start the second quarter with a delay of game, which is inexcusable for a fourth-year quarterback. That's inexcusable for a freshman quarterback playing varsity football in high school. And then after the delay of game, he misses Dominic Wood-Anderson for what would have been an 83-yard touchdown. So we haven't seen him play a complete football game. When Brian Maurer has come in, he's made a couple of plays. JG has actually made more plays in each game where the two have played. But because people aren't happy with JG's overall body of work, and they shouldn't be, it has not been good, they automatically want to put somebody else in. But it goes back to kind of why I'm not ready to put Brian Maurer in just yet, is because JG gives you the best chance to win when he is playing at his best. And that's kind of why I think you haven't seen Pruitt make that move, is because he's holding out hope that JG can be at his best. Because whether people want to agree with it or not, JG at his best, as we saw last year in multiple football games, is capable of beating everybody remaining on Tennessee's schedule, except for Alabama and except for Georgia. I think that goes without saying. So that's why I'm not willing to put JG in. But here's why that's why I'm not willing to put Maurer in. But here's why I would be willing to put Maurer in. Because there's 10 other football players on the field at the same time as JG, and they have not been responding to JG the way they have to Maurer when Maurer comes in. The team seems much more energetic. They seem much more receptive when Maurer is in there rather than when JG is in there. Going back and kind of watching the game this afternoon, there was a play, I think it was on the first drive of the second half for Tennessee, Maurer's very first drive of the game, and they were driving down. They were on Florida side of the field, and obviously they settled for a field goal. But there was an instant where Maurer was, walking back and forth along the offensive line, barking out, the play call or whatnot, or saying whatever he's saying. And he goes from left to right, walks past the left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. And Dominic Wood-Anderson is off the right of the right tackle. And he kind of turns around and just kind of taps Brian Maurer on the head. And maybe that's because he's a freshman in his first drive in the swamp. But you don't see those little things when JG is in there. It was as simple as a tap on the head saying, come on, let's go. I've got confidence in you. And, again, maybe it's because Brian Maurer is a true freshman. And JG does not need that. But you don't even see those little itty-bitty interactions with JG. So in terms of both players at their best, I still think JG gives this Tennessee team the best chance to win, and that has more to do so with the fact that the backup options aren't just ready yet. But there are 10 other football players on the field with JG, and he is not elevating their play. And as Marquez Callaway mentioned 2 weeks ago, the confidence of the offense is down, and I think part of that is because of JG's demeanor. The team reacts better when Brian Maurer is in the game. So if you're going to make a change, I think that would be the reason you do it, not necessarily because of the play. Because, again, as I said earlier, Brian Maurer is making the same mistakes as JG, throwing in the double coverage, throwing in the triple coverage, missing guys wide open. And we haven't seen it as often because Maurer hasn't played as much, but he is making the same mistakes. And I believe we would see more of those mistakes than JG if he played an entire game and JG did not play. So that's kind of my overall thought on the quarterback room at the moment.
Yeah, like you said there, I mean, they're making kind of the same mistakes, but I mean, Maurer's a true freshman. Guarantano's a fourth-year player, so it's to me, it's more forgivable. Yeah, and like you said, it's just I don't think there's, and I said this in my column too. I don't think there's a great option on the roster right now. I don't think Tennessee's answer to the quarterback position is currently on the roster at scholarship. You could argue maybe Kasim Hill is if when he gets on scholarship and if, next year and he recovers from the injuries he's had, or it could be Harrison Bailey when he comes in. But I mean, he's going to be a true freshman too, and most of the time, true freshmen aren't saviors at quarterback in the SEC. I mean, like you said, you've got obvious examples of guys, but those are more kind of transcendent type players like a Trevor Lawrence that come in and do things like, or a Tua. I guess Tua was actually a redshirt freshman, but still, Johnny Manziel is a redshirt freshman too. I mean, you don't have a lot of times true freshmen come in and immediately, have a huge impact on their team. I don't think the long-term answer at quarterback is on the roster right now. I just really don't. But I, like you said, that was the point I was going to make, and you brought it up. The way the team responded on Saturday with Maurer in there compared to what happened with Guarantano, that to me spoke volumes. And maybe we're looking too much into it, like you said, and maybe just because he's a true freshman that they wanted to, up his confidence and, give him a little more reassurance because he's a young kid and he's new to this and Guarantano's not. So maybe we're looking too much into it. But I noticed too. I can't remember if you said this. I know you mentioned the one about Donwood Anderson there, but I noticed too, on that pick that Guarantano threw to Callaway, Guarantano yelled at Callaway, and then Callaway snapped back at him and told him, "Hey, no, it wasn't my fault." And then Guarantano shut up real quick. And then after the game, Callaway spoke to the media. Ben, you and I weren't there, but I saw David Ubben tweet out a quote from Callaway. Then, for whatever reason, UT doesn't send out player quotes after road games, so I haven't seen video of it or heard exactly the exact quote, but David Ubben had at least a general idea of the quote of Callaway saying, hey, talking about kind of Guarantano's reaction. He said, he learned that essentially that if you're not playing better, you're going to be in trouble. That he kind of was a little bit of a wake up call. I'm gonna try to get that actual quote here if I can get the actual quote here, just so I'm not kind of putting words in Ubben's mouth or putting words in Callaway's mouth. But really, Ben, I agree with you. To me, I just haven't seen the team respond all that well to Guarantano, and they've seemed to respond a little better to Maurer. Like I said, maybe we're looking too much into it, maybe not. But to me, I think the bye week is a good time to get whoever it is ready, whether it's going to be Maurer, whether it's going to be Shrout. I don't know. But I just don't think Guarantano gives Tennessee the best chance to win. And I get what you were saying about a lot of different things. Like I said, I thought you made some good points about just different stuff about Guarantano and him giving Tennessee a better chance when he plays up to his potential, and the fact that Maurer, he's not been great. He wasn't great on Saturday. People make it sound like he had a much better day than Guarantano. He didn't. He made a couple good throws, and then he made a couple, not great throws, and he made a really bad one that was picked off. But at the same time,
he performed the same way as JG did, up and down. And I know I'm going to come off as defending JG and whatnot. I'm really not defending JG's play because it has been terrible. I just don't think it's the right time to make a change just for the sake of change. And it has more to do so just simply with the other options. The other options aren't good at the moment. And again, that's not saying that Brian Maurer won't be good. There are a lot of traits that I like about Brian Maurer. I said it earlier. He energizes this team. He plays with a confidence and a swagger that JG does not play with. That is tremendous, and that will be beneficial to him long term. But in terms of X's and O's, JG is the better quarterback, whether folks want to believe it or not. You can even go back and look at some of the run plays in the first quarter, down along the goal line right before Juwan dropped the pass and it was intercepted. JG checks out of a run to the right side, checks it to the left side, communicates it to the offensive lineman, and it results in a positive rush. And he did that on numerous occasions in the swamp in Gainesville against Florida in a rivalry game. But he won't get credit for that because the narrative on him is that he just flat out sucks. He doesn't know how to count, that he is dumb, that he doesn't have good football IQ. He's not a bad quarterback, in my opinion. I know, again, a lot of people are going to disagree with that, when he is at his best. But the problem is he is not playing at his best, and that's why he has created this ridiculous dilemma for the coaches. Do you put JG in and pray that he turns it around, because a turned around JG gives you a chance to win every game on your schedule except Alabama and Georgia, but you can't continue to trot him out there if he's going to continue to play the way he is. So do you go with the younger Maurer and get him ready to play, but knowing that you probably will win max 3 or 4 games? So I don't know. It's a terrible dilemma that JG's play has put Tennessee's coaches in, and it's really unfortunate because JG is 10 times better than the quarterback that he is proving to be. And it's really unfortunate.
I'll agree with you that he's not a bad quarterback. I said that in my piece too, because Pruitt said it after the game, and I agree with him. But Guarantano has ability. He can be a good player. He's shown that. Unfortunately, he's shown more often than not that he had a great game. A really, really good game against Auburn last year. He played well against South Carolina. He played well against Kentucky. The rest of the games he was in, they were mediocre to. He had a really bad game against Vanderbilt, and the rest of them were kind of, okay. They weren't great, but they were serviceable enough to not put Tennessee in disastrous situations on offense. He wasn't making really poor decisions like he is this year. This year he's had one decent performance, or I guess it was good. I'm not gonna downgrade it. It was good, but it was against UTC, so obviously whatever. But he had a good performance against UTC. He was, as you mentioned, he's put together good quarters and good halves against all the other opponents. Just a matter of putting together a full good full game. And he hasn't done that this season. That's just point blank. He hasn't. He didn't play a full game against UTC, but he essentially did. He would have been able to do the exact same thing in that game if he'd stayed in the second half. But here's the full quote from David Ubben from Marquez Callaway after the game on Saturday. Obviously, it hurts to be told you're not going to go out there and start. It hit Jarrett, but I think it also put him on the right mindset that if he don't get his head together, things aren't going to go his way. Things are going to go this way. Excuse me. So if he it put him in the right mindset that if he doesn't get his head together, things are going to go this way. So he was saying, it was kind of a wake up call to Guarantano, and I think it's a good quote from Callaway. People were kind of saying, oh, it's a very telling quote, and he's just saying all that stuff about JG. I think people were looking into it a little bit, but I do think that was a pretty telling quote, saying, hey, it hit him the right way. And Guarantano came out in the second half when he was put back in. I don't know a bit. I honestly don't remember as much about the second half because at that point I wouldn't say tuned out, but I was starting to write some more and focusing on trying to get a piece out about the game and everything. So I wasn't maybe as tuned in as I was in the first half, but it didn't really seem like he played that much better when he came back in the game than he did in the first half. But ultimately, Ben, I want to talk about the coaching stuff, so I want to end on this as we kind of close out the quarterback discussion. We're going to have, there's going to be plenty to talk about with the quarterback moving forward. There's going to be, Pruitt won't have a Monday press conference because it's the bye week, and they just don't do that on bye weeks. But there'll still be practice this week. I'm sure, and Pruitt's going to talk to the media on Wednesday for the SEC coaches teleconference, and after practice on Wednesday. So we'll hear from him this week. It just won't be on Monday. But before we change to the coaching stuff, ultimately we've got this week of practice for the bye week, the next week of practice for the Georgia game. So we've got 2 more weeks of practice before anything kind of has to be decided on the quarterback situation. Where do you think Pruitt and Chaney and this staff go? Where do you think they turn? Do you think they make the move and they start Maurer or Stroud or someone else besides Guarantano at quarterback against Georgia, or do you think in 2 weeks' time we're going to be looking at Jarrett Guarantano taking the field when Tennessee hosts number 3 Georgia in Knoxville?
Against Georgia, I think JG is going to be trotted out there to start the game. I don't, even if JG was playing good football, I don't think he would finish the game just because I think Georgia's just going to thoroughly dominate Tennessee, and it's not going to be a game in the third, fourth quarter. So naturally, Maurer or Stroud will be in there because I do think that Pruitt doesn't want to throw a true freshman out there to the Wolves. Just kind of based off the comments that he made post game and comments about JG the last couple of weeks, I think Pruitt thinks the same way that I'm thinking on the situation, and I don't say that to like bolster my point or anything like that, but just based off, I think that he thinks the way that I am based off his comments, because he continues to say that JG has ability. He has the ability to be a really good football player, and he's also alluded to the fact that if you've been around the football program the last 6 months, you know that he's the best quarterback on the roster when they are playing at their best. So I don't think Pruitt is going to want to throw Maurer to the Wolves, and I do think that JG will be starting against Mississippi State the week after that. I think that's the bigger question. Who is starting against Mississippi State? Because even if you get average quarterback play, your team is still capable of winning that football game, and that has more to do with Mississippi State, not Tennessee. Mississippi State is very beatable. Kentucky had its backup quarterback in this past weekend against them, and he didn't play all that well, and Kentucky still had a chance to win that football game late. So I think that's the big question. It's not against Georgia, but against South Carolina. I keep mixing South Carolina and Mississippi State up. Against Mississippi State, the week after Georgia, who is starting that football game? I think that will be telling. And honestly, I think it's JG because at the end of the day, I think when JG is playing at his best and when I think Brian Maurer is playing at his best as a freshman, I think JG gives Tennessee the best chance to win. I think it's as simple as that. I think Pruitt thinks that, which is why he continues to give JG chance after chance after chance. And I think he is going to kind of ride that until the wheels just completely fall off because, I mean, Pruitt's got to win some games here to make up for Georgia State, the Georgia State debacle. And I don't know that against a very good Mississippi State defense, a very good front seven, that Maurer – is the best option. I mean, it'll be fun from a fan perspective just because somebody's out there running around. But again, I kind of think that the coaching staff is holding out hope that the Auburn JG, the Kentucky, the South Carolina JG, I think they're holding out hope that he shows up. Because if he shows up, then I think Tennessee has a great chance at beating Mississippi State. But if he doesn't, then I think it'll be a quick pull. And I think Brian Maurer will be in there, into the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter.
Yeah, I'll be very interested to see where they go after the bye week. Because like you said, even if Guarantano starts, that doesn't mean he's finishing that game, and that doesn't mean that Guarantano's going to start against Mississippi State either. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out, to see where they go here after the bye week. But like I said, I don't think there's going to be an ideal time to start Maurer for at least another maybe month at this point. So maybe you just go ahead and just go with it. I don't know. We'll see. I know where I stand. I think I know where I would go. But like I said, you got to earn it in practice. If Maurer goes out there and has a really bad week of practice, you can't just hand the job over to him. You can't do that. That's rewarding a guy for having bad practices. That sets, as I said earlier, it sets a really bad precedent for everyone else because all these other guys are going to think, hey, I can be a quote unquote gamer. I can be a guy who can have really bad practices and then still play on Saturday. And if they don't, they get mad at the coach and raise a ruckus. And it's just gonna. That's not how you do things. And I don't think Pruitt would do that either. To this point, he hasn't shown that he's going to reward guys who have bad practices. That's his biggest thing he talks about is you got to earn it in practice. So we'll see how this week of practice goes. We'll see how next week of practice goes. But I'm very interested. I know everyone's going to be very interested and watch very closely, not just locally or regionally, but I mean nationally, what Tennessee does at that quarterback position because it's a very intriguing storyline and it's one that, as we said, Ben, we don't think there's a true difference maker at quarterback right now on the roster, and Tennessee isn't just one position fix away from saving their season. There are plenty of other positions on this team that need fixed. The secondary as a whole has not been good. The defensive line has been ineffective this whole season. This whole season. You've had issues with Ty Chandler not being able to bring down screen passes of all things. It's been a mess from all over. I mean, offensive line's gotten better, but they're still obviously not top half of the SEC or anything like that. They're still kind of they're having issues. You have a lot of young guys playing there, but at least they're showing some promise, and they have gotten better as the season's gone along for the most part, and they've gotten better from last year. But this is not a one position fix away from suddenly this being a much different, much better team. You don't have that kind of quarterback on the roster, and you also have a lot of different issues across the board on other positions. So it is what it is. Tennessee's got decisions to make at multiple positions. You're going to have, as Pruitt said after the game on Saturday, you're going to have essentially open competitions at a lot of different spots, and I definitely think you'll see more young guys get more minutes against Georgia or maybe not even against Georgia, but definitely against Mississippi State because they're going to use these next 2 weeks. They got nothing but practice. They're going to use the next 2 weeks to really hone in on that and work some of these guys and figure out, who does give us the best chance of winning. But then just for the final little bit here, we're already up to about 40-something minutes on the podcast, so I don't want to spend too much longer, but I thought it was at least worth addressing here. Coaching. how much of the game on Saturday do you put on coaching? How much the season so far do you put on coaching? Because I've seen a lot of people blast Jim Chaney's play calling. I've seen a lot of people talk about, this being all on Pruitt, and have definitely, you and I both have seen people talk about wanting to fire Pruitt, and whatever, especially if the Tennessee goes 1-6 or 1-7. Should they fire him? Should they let him go? I'm in the camp that these coaches are consistently putting these players in positions to win, in positions to make plays. They're making the right play calls. Now, not every single play call I agree with. I still like Jim Chaney. I still think he's a very good OC, obviously, and he still was my top choice for Tennessee to bring in, and I think they made a really good choice to bring him in. I disagree with some of the ways he didn't go towards the run against Florida. He does have that tendency now, especially. I think he's kind of always had it, but he's had the tendency, especially at Tennessee in the past and now, to when Tennessee falls behind or if things aren't going great, he kind of gets a little more pass happy than he does with the run. And I disagree with some of the stuff he did, but I thought, as you mentioned, he made a brilliant play call. Austin Pope was wide open on the goal line. I thought they made a great call putting him out to the flat, and he was open. Unfortunately for Tennessee, the defensive lineman, or whoever it was, linebacker, defensive lineman, the Florida defender, made a really good play and batted the ball down. And the play call for Juwan Jennings was a good play call. Jennings just didn't catch it. The play where they ran Palmer out to the sideline and Maurer made a throw, I mean, that was a perfectly placed throw by Maurer, but that was a good play call to pick on that defensive back and get the mismatch with Palmer, because Palmer is more athletic than him, taller than him, and they knew that if they threw the ball a little high, Palmer could come down with it and the DB couldn't. So there are plenty of times where there were really good play calls, and there's also a bunch of times where Tennessee just didn't execute it, both on offense and defense. And that's not just for the Florida game. That's been all season. So I'm putting, obviously there's some blame to put on the coaches, because it's ultimately falls back on them, and they've got to get players ready better. And there's also just different stuff they haven't done. Maybe you can say it's on Pruitt for not pulling Guarantano sooner or whatever. There's definitely blame to go with the coaches, but I still think the majority of the blame goes on the players, because they're the ones. There's just a severe lack of execution. I think Wes Rucker from 247 Sports said it on Twitter. If you have a quarterback and receiver who are less than 15 yards away from each other, and the receiver is wide open, and you can't complete a pass to him, that's not on the coaches. The coaches can't go out there and throw that pass. The coaches can't go out there and catch it. That's on just lack of execution. Same things with the penalties on Trey Smith, with the Juwan Jennings penalty, with the K'Ron Calvert penalty. The K'Ron Calvert one I think was a little questionable, but still, and Daniel Batuli had a 15-yard penalty. You had three upperclassmen make 15-yard penalties on Saturday. That wasn't on a discipline thing where the coaches didn't have discipline. That was just them making poor decisions in a game. That wasn't a coaching issue. That was a player decision, just being stupid or making the wrong choice. Like I said, I think coaching deserves some of it, but Ben, I truly believe I hesitate to say vast majority, but definitely the majority of the blame, in my opinion, goes on the players and their inability to execute, or inability to understand, or inability to whatever. I think it's the players. It's more on the players than it is the coaches at this point, in my opinion.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think the Georgia State debacle 1,000% falls on the coaches. That was the third game in a row that Jeremy Pruitt did not have his team ready to play, dating back to last season. Missouri, Vanderbilt, Georgia State. 3 games in a row dating back to last season that your team wasn't ready to play, was unprepared, did not play with effort. That is a non-negotiable. So that Georgia State game 100% falls on Jeremy Pruitt and the coaches. But the BYU game and the Florida game, 90% of it falls on the players. I 1,000% believe that, and I don't understand how anybody who knows even just the smallest things about football can sit and watch Tennessee football games right now, particularly the BYU game and the Florida game, and think that is on the coaches, because it's just not. It's players not executing. At some point, the players have to take what is being coached to them in practice and go out there and execute. It's really as simple as that. Coverage bust, the defensive lineman not being able to get off the ball quick enough, not being able to generate a pass rush, the linebackers on the outside linebackers not being able to generate a pass rush, the inside linebackers, other than Henry To'oTo'o and Daniel Batuli, not knowing what to do. That's all on the players to me. I think the defensive play calling has been perfectly fine, other than the Georgia State game. Players are missing tackles. players are missing tackles. The secondary is just busting on coverages. They're just giving up too much space to the receiver. The defensive line, as I mentioned, isn't able to generate a pass rush. And then you look on the offensive side of the ball, and Jarrett Guarantano has not executed the game plan, missing easy throws, missing guys who are wide open, throwing into double and triple coverage. That's not on the coaches. That's just purely executing the game plan, executing the play that is called. Ty Chandler not catching the football out of the backfield. I mean, it's simple. It's stuff that middle school football players can achieve. And a lot of people want to get on JG for his throws on these swing passes to the running back out in the flat. It's not JG. It's the running back the running back gaining too much depth. They are taught on the swing passes to lose a yard as you go out. So if you start on the 27-yard line, you kind of drop back to the 28-yard line. That way, when you catch the ball, you're back at the 27-yard line. Ty Chandler's like getting too much depth. He's going 2 and 3 yards back, which is causing JG's throws to look inaccurate. Ty Chandler has to do a better job on that. The offensive lineman just blitzing on blocks. It comes down to execution for me, particularly against BYU, against Florida. I think anybody with any football IQ can see that. And the reason you are hearing all these national media members kind of go after Pruitt, go after Fulmer, is because they look at the box score and they don't watch the game. If you watch the box score and you look at the comments on social media, then you think it is an absolute train wreck. It is a train wreck, but a train wreck in the sense of Butch Jones things, Derek Dooley things are happening. That's not the truth. It's just not. If you watch the game, you would see that the players aren't executing and they're making the coaches look worse than what they actually are. So I'm tired of all these national media members looking at the box score, not watching the game, and just assuming that it's Jeremy Pruitt and just a whole lot of dysfunction. The dysfunction is from the players not executing, and I think anybody who has watched the game and anybody who has a semblance of football IQ can realize that. So is the 1-3 start okay? Is it acceptable? Absolutely not. Tennessee should be 2-2 right now. I would say 3-1 right now. Tennessee should have won the BYU game. Tennessee should have won the Georgia State game. They should be 3-1. And to a certain extent, yes, that falls on the coaches. But I think the majority of it is that Jeremy Pruitt is having to deal with these leftover Butch Jones players. And we can't continue to bash Butch Jones, but then turn around and bash Jeremy Pruitt when he's having to deal with Butch Jones's players. So I think a lot of it has to do with execution and not coaching, in my opinion.
100% agree with you. And I'll say this before we close here. You know, you mentioned some of the national people and stuff talking about firing Pruitt, or you also mentioned, you know, bashing Fulmer as AD. Pay attention to who some of these people are who are writing these things and saying these things. And if you remember back to all the stuff with John Curry, I guarantee you'll notice that a lot of the people who are saying some stuff that they were. I want to say this: they have an agenda. Not every single one of them, obviously. Not every single person bashing Pruitt or bashing Fulmer or saying some of the stuff they're saying. Not every single one of them has an agenda. Not every single one of them has a connection, to John Curry or anything like that. But I for 100% can guarantee you a few of them, maybe some of the loudest voices, definitely do. I'm not trying to get into a bunch of conspiracy theories and things like that. But Ben, Swain said that he said as much on his show about Curry having to bad-mouthing Tennessee behind the scenes. That's 100% a fact. Curry has 100% been bad-mouthing Tennessee behind the scenes, and he still, we all saw the emails and stuff he would send to guys like Dan Volkin and other people, congratulating them and talking about he's read their pieces and different stuff. He has connections. He didn't like what happened with Fulmer and how everything was handled with him and his end of the run at AD at Tennessee. Talk about Curry. I guarantee you some of these people, like I said, maybe some of the loudest voices in all this and some of the more prominent positions over there of writing and covering college football, I guarantee you there's some of these people have agendas that they're definitely catering towards. Not all of them, but definitely some of them. But I think that'll do it here. Ben and I, you and I could just sit here and talk a lot longer about a lot of different stuff with Tennessee football around, not even just quarterback. We could talk about all kinds of different stuff from that game and moving forward for Tennessee and this season. I'm sure we will. We'll have at least another podcast this week coming out. It's a bye week, but like I said, there's so much to talk about. We can talk about the football team. And Ben, I know this week I'm going to try to do more content on the site about men's basketball. I'll have your interview with Lady Vol head coach Kelly Harper in a podcast format as well, so everybody can listen to that. So we're going to have, during the bye week, we'll obviously keep covering football and talk about the football team, but we're going to have, hopefully give you all some nice stuff to read, nice stuff to listen to, that some more successful programs on Tennessee's campus. Not that the Lady Vols have been super successful, but they at least haven't been this bad. And obviously the men's team's been very good. You're going to have some baseball stuff coming out this week. There's an exhibition game for a fall practice, or not fall practice, but a fall game for Tennessee's baseball team against Clemson coming up, and you'll be talking about that as well, Ben. So we'll have baseball, men's basketball, Lady Vols coverage for you during the bye week to give you a little break from just the doldrums and negativity of the football team. But we'll also obviously talk about position battles, not just a quarterback, but other positions and all kinds of different stuff moving forward, because there's going to be more stuff coming out moving forward about just different stuff. Not that I have inside info. I'm just saying that's Tennessee football. Things are going to happen. We're going to have information about Bryce Thompson's court date. We'll see how Jameer Johnson is faring after he didn't make the trip with the team down to Gainesville because he had as Pruitt said, I think it was a minor procedure or something like that. He said, and then we never heard why Will Ignott didn't travel down with the team. So maybe we'll get some information on that. But we'll have all that for you at RockyTopInsider.com. Whenever stuff happens. But thank you all for listening to this episode. We're on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, wherever it is now. But you can find us on any kind of Apple device, any Android device. All our podcast is available on all of that. We're on RockyTopInsider.com. Click on the podcast tab there. You can listen to it straight from there. And YouTube is our new way. You can interact with us. We have several people leave comments on our podcasts. We appreciate that. You can interact with us there and listen to it that way as well. But signing off for Ben McKee, I'm Nathaniel Rutherford. Thank you all again. This has been another episode of the RTI Podcast.